What is the actual effect of frequency upon our physical atomic body? And how can we better navigate this by creating ways of living, ways of being that allows us to incubate against this influence in our lives? Great questions. Let's jump into it. Welcome back, adepts and initiates. Go ahead if you haven't yet and click on that subscribe button so that you can stay in constant contact with all of the content on this channel. Alright, so if you've already watched the piece on frequency, what it is and how it has an impact upon us in general, then I'm going to reference a little bit on that, and if you haven't seen it yet, then go ahead and click on that in the comments, and then you'll follow a little bit more easily in terms of what all of this is about. Today though, we're going to be talking again about our frequency, and specifically, how does frequency affect and impact us in our everyday lives. Now, last time we talked about the different ranges of frequency and how that can actually start off with us in terms of an everyday person, how we can be affected by the people around us, that collective field, like if you're at a sporting event or if you're down at a comedy show or something like that, we can be subject to the energy of those around us. Now, those around us can also be affected by localized energy frequency. Now, that's everything from the difference of being out in nature, beholding a beautiful waterfall, and on the other end of that spectrum, being at a sewage plant, right? So where we are kind of matters because it has a profound impact upon us. This can also, though, be affected by the planetary frequency. The Schumann resonance, as it's called, can have these spikes, and these spikes can be, again, peaks and valleys. Generally, it can be pretty consistent, yet when we do have those larger range and full spectrum experiences, it can be disruptive AF. This can also be affected by solar flares, coronal mass ejections, as the sun explodes this massive amount of radiation, comes in a huge wave of electromagnetic energy and frequency, hits the planet then goes through a spike. That can be experienced locally. It's sort of like it amplifies that local energy. So if we're out in nature, then we might just feel this big sensation of peace. We might feel this deep reverence for where we're at. If we're in the city and we're, getting ourselves worked up, that can also be affected as well, which then can affect and influence the people and ultimately us. Yet, how does that actually look like? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is this concept of going from frequency in general to brainwave frequencies at large. Now, brainwave frequencies, we'll see this in terms of the concept of brainwave coherence, or coherence in general, is that we have our left hemisphere and we have our right hemisphere, right? And so that left hemisphere is all about logic and rational mindset, analytics, methodology, so on and so forth. It's really great with fixed information and data. Now, the thing about that is the right hemisphere is that opposite side. If the left hemisphere is a matter of intelligence, the right hemisphere is a matter of imagination, emotion, intuition, deep and rich. The thing about that is that majority of our day is actually held on the left hemisphere. The alarm clock goes off, we go through our routines, so on and so forth. Now, we can have, with these hemispheres, independent frequencies of each other. And when we talk about brainwave coherence, it's really looking at the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, and they being and operating at a resonant frequency, right? I can often think about this in terms of relationship. We can be in a relationship and time can pass just seamlessly. It could be hours that feel like minutes, and that's when we're in that really great, beautiful space of connection, of alignment, of resonance. And it's not always like that. Sometimes we can get in terms of areas of like tension and friction. And those times make, those minutes more like hours. And so that can happen internally when we're in this sort of discoherent state with our left hemisphere, the masculine, and our right hemisphere, the feminine. Now, going into all that, we have generally, though there's more, but we're going to really just focus on these 1, 2, 3, and 4 brainwave frequency states. Now, so we're talking about brainwave frequencies. We're going to focus on the wave portion of this, okay? And we're going to look at all of these in terms of where we typically are through most of our day, where we can have snippets dependent upon the day, areas that will visit at least when we fall asleep at night, and sometimes areas that may elude us overall. Let's start at the top with beta. Now, beta is where we're generally in on most of our days. It's an area and state of mind that is a little more erratic. And so when we look at this, again, we've got three areas with our brain, with our frequencies, right? We have oscillations, so we can have more erratic, larger areas where there's sharper spikes, not necessarily a specific pattern. I think that since we're talking again about waves, I'm going to use the ocean as a way to exhibit this. So some days if you go out to the ocean, right, there are rolling swells that just kind of come in. It's very soothing. This ain't that. This is where the water is choppy. It's splashing if you're in the water. It's wind-capped. It's a windy day. All kinds of things are happening. And there's no consistency. There's no pattern. There's no beautiful movement. Instead, this is where a majority of our day is spent in beta. Beta is great for processing information. However, we have this phenomena of being overloaded by information. The sounds of our cell phones, right? Cars, music, TV, screens, people, all sorts of things that are happening that our mind needs to process and to take in. And so a big part in terms of a distinguishing factor of beta is that our focus is outside of ourselves, right? We are focusing on processing information from the outside and bringing it in, which is very different than alpha. Alpha is like those swells, and it really is a very swell place to be because it is a slow, easy movement. We have more consistency with the flow, and we have a lower area in terms of both the peaks and the valleys. Now, this is a state when you're reading a good book, when you're hanging out with good friends, amongst quality company. You could just be relaxing and watching TV. This is an area that is very restorative. It allows us to access still processing information coming in from the outside, though we have a deeper internal connection. And it allows us to access this area more within the subconscious mind. Now, that's one big part of it. As we look at beta, especially that erratic piece where we're processing information coming from the outside in, a big part of this is that it actually is more of our conscious mind than our subconscious mind. Whereas our alpha goes into both. We're still attentive to the world around us, however, we are deeply connected with inside of ourselves. Now, it continues to go down very much. Now we start to see the ocean beginning to calm. We don't have those huge erratic waves. Now we've just got very little movement. Right? The peaks and the valleys are very, very condensed. It's much smaller. As we talk about theta, we're getting into areas of deep relaxation, strong connection to the subconscious mind. We're getting into areas of deep meditation or deep meditative states and light sleep. So if you have ever arrived at your driveway after a 45-minute drive with absolutely no recollection of how the fuck you got home, that's our theta in a waking state. Deep meditation, eyes closed, breathing, and we start to feel everything just relax. We're in this place of just openness, of calmness, of peace. Theta. In a place where we're in sleep and we have some rapid eye movement or dream state sleep, that's deep theta, which drops us all the way down into delta. And delta is where we really are. It's where you pass out at night. You're watching TV or you're just relaxing. You pass out at night and you wake up with no concept of what time it is, sometimes where you're even at. And that state is almost just a straight line. Because delta is where our mind drops into such a deep state of relaxation that we are able to fully restore our body. So when we're sick or when we are injured or when we're just really, really tired, we can drop into this place of delta because it's highly restorative, and that's a great thing for our body, for our mind, and for the soul itself. And as we look at all this then, going back one step, as we look at this related to frequency, when we have a solar flare, for example, that hits the planet with a large amount of electromagnetic radiation that can cause and be emitted within the areas that we're at, amplifying the sensation of the people around us, it can directly impact us as a bioelectric organism. We are bioelectric organisms, right? And so when our brain has a thought, it sends an electrical signal to my hand to do this, right? And it's all governed and regulated by our nervous system. And so when we're taking in this large spike of frequency, for example, that comes in from the solar flare, from the so on and so forth, it can take us from being, for example, in an alpha state. We're having a good time, all of a sudden something, we feel that energy spike through us, and it is disruptive AF. And when that happens, our nervous system can get overwhelmed. We can feel overwhelmed. We can feel irritable or exhausted. Sometimes we can feel energized and excited. So it amplifies not just the people around us, not just the planetary frequency and that resonance. It amplifies whatever state we are in. And not consciously, subconsciously. Because that's where the magnitude, the power, and the profundity of our awareness is. Emotions that haven't been dealt with will just start to spurt all over the place. And things in terms of our beliefs, maybe all of a sudden put through a whole augmentation, a magnetization. And as that happens, things then really start to come into play because we have this frequency that comes in, that affects us, that can impact our nervous system, and that can disrupt our daily lives as well. More to follow. That's it for now. Love and aloha. Take care, and ahui ho.